In the dusty town square of Willow Creek, Montana Territory, in the hard year of 1887, a young pregnant woman stood shivering on the auction block while greedy men shouted bids that would seal her fate forever. The summer sun burned like fire that July afternoon. Mary was just 19, her belly round and heavy with a child that would come any day now. She wore a faded calico dress, patched many times, and her brown hair was tied back with a piece of string. Her own mother had dragged her here at dawn. "We got no money left," the woman had hissed. "The bank took the farm. Someone else can feed you and that bastard child." The crowd laughed cruelly. "Who wants a girl already carrying?" a fat farmer yelled. "She'll eat you out of house and home," another shouted. Mary stared at the wooden planks beneath her bare feet. Hot tears stung her eyes, but she bit her lip hard. She felt like a broken plow no one needed anymore. Then a tall, silent man pushed through the crowd, his face weathered by wind and sun, his gray eyes quiet and steady. He wore dusty leather chaps, a faded blue work shirt, and scuffed boots. A worn Stetson hat shaded his face. This was Jacob Miles, the lone rancher from the high valley 20 miles north. Folks said his young wife and baby boy had died of the spotted fever 3 winters back. Since that day, Jacob had spoken to almost no one. He worked his cattle from first light till dark, but his big log house stayed cold and empty. Jacob raised a calloused hand. His voice was low and calm. "I'll give $200 in gold." The square fell silent. No one else wanted to pay so much for a burdened girl. The auctioneer slammed his gavel on the barrel. "Sold to Jacob Miles." Mary's heart pounded with fear. What would the stranger do to her? She had heard dark stories about men who bought women at auctions. But Jacob did not leer or grin. He simply took off his hat, gave a small, respectful nod, and said, "Come along, miss. You'll be safe on my place." He helped her climb into his old buckboard wagon and tucked a clean wool blanket around her shoulders. They rode north for hours along the rutted trail. Mary sat stiff, one hand on her belly, the other clutching the side rail. Jacob spoke little, only pointing once or twice. "That's my herd yonder. The creek runs sweet water all year. You'll have your own room." When the wagon finally rolled through the gate of the Rockin' M Ranch, Mary caught her breath. A solid 2-story log house stood on a green hill, with a wide porch, a big barn, and corrals full of horses. But the place felt too quiet, as if it had been holding its breath for years. Jacob carried her small bundle inside and opened a door at the back. "This room is yours," he said. "There's a bolt on the inside. Nobody enters unless you say so." That first night, Mary lay awake on the straw-tick mattress, listening to the wind in the pines. She cried into the pillow until she had no tears left. But at sunrise, she found warm cornbread, fresh milk in a tin cup, and a clean calico dress folded on the chair. Jacob had left them without a word. Day after day, the fear inside her slowly melted. Jacob never raised his voice, never came near her room at night. He worked the cattle and fixed fences from dawn to dusk, but every evening he knocked softly and asked, "You need anything for the little one, ma'am?" At first, Mary only nodded. Then she began to answer in small words. He patched the leaky roof with fresh shingles so rain would not drip on her bed. He brought soft sheep's wool so she could knit a warm blanket. One afternoon she heard hammering in the corner of her room. Jacob was shaping smooth pine boards with his sandsaw and knife. "What are you making?" she asked shyly.
"A cradle," he answered, eyes on his work. "Every babe needs a safe place to sleep. I once had a son. He never got to use his." His voice broke just once, and Mary saw the old pain carved deep in his face. That was the moment she understood. Jacob had not bought her to use her. He had bought her to spare her the same terrible loneliness he still carried inside.
From that day forward, trust grew like spring grass after rain. Mary began to speak more. She told him about the cold nights when her family had only boiled cornmeal to eat. Jacob listened quietly, then shared his own story, how he and his wife used to sit on this very porch watching the sunset, how the house had gone silent the day they were buried on the hill. He built her a rocking chair from oak. He planted hollyhocks and wild roses beside the house because she said she missed colors. They ate supper together every night at the big plank table, lit by a single kerosene lamp. Sometimes they laughed softly at the clumsy new foal in the corral. Sometimes they sat without words, just peaceful. The lonely ranch house began to feel warm again. Then came the terrible night of the big storm. Black clouds raced across the sky. Thunder cracked like rifle shots. Rain hammered the shingle roof. Mary woke with a knife-sharp pain tearing through her body. "Jacob!" she cried. He ran in, pulling on his shirt, hair wild. "It's time," she gasped. "The baby's coming." Jacob did not panic. He lit 2 more lanterns, stoked the wood stove till the room glowed warm, and brought clean cloths and hot water from the kettle. Outside, the wind howled and lightning split the sky. Mary gripped his strong hand and cried out with every pain, but Jacob stayed steady. "Breathe, Mary. You're the strongest woman I ever met. I'm right here. You ain't alone no more." Hours passed. The storm raged on. With one final mighty push and a loud cry that cut through the thunder, a tiny baby boy slipped into Jacob's waiting hands. He was small but perfect, lungs strong, crying loud enough to wake the cattle. Jacob wrapped the newborn in the soft wool blanket Mary had knitted and laid him gently on her chest. Tears ran down both their faces. "He's a fine, healthy boy," he whispered, voice thick. "You did it, Mary. You both made it." Mary looked up at the man who had saved her life twice. "Thank you, Jacob. You gave me more than a roof. You gave me a home and hope." The storm passed by morning. Mary named the baby Samuel after Jacob's father. Jacob carved the name on the cradle with his pocket knife in careful letters. He opened the little room upstairs that had stayed locked for 3 years and made it ready. Now it echoed with soft baby coos and gentle lullabies sung by a mother's voice. Mary walked taller. The same townsfolk who once laughed at her now tipped their hats when she came to the general store. Jacob smiled again, real smiles that reached his gray eyes. The empty corrals rang with the sound of a child's laughter. The silent supper table became filled with happy talk. The ranch that had felt like a graveyard was now alive with love. Years later, when little Samuel chased grasshoppers across the green pasture, Jacob would swing him onto his shoulders and say, "This land was empty once, son. Then your mama came and everything changed." Mary would watch them from the porch, heart full to bursting. She had stepped onto that auction block with nothing. She had walked away with everything. A husband who cherished her, a son who would never know hunger or shame, and a home that rang with joy. The big Montana sky stretched wider and brighter now.
The wind carried songs instead of silence, and every evening, as the sun dipped behind the snow-capped mountains, Jacob and Mary sat on the porch, holding hands, watching their boy play. The old pain was still there, but love had made it smaller. The lonely ranch was lonely no more. It was home at last. Thank you for riding along on this story. Drop your location and time one more time if you'd like, and if it touched you, like, send some stars, follow, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you in the next tale of courage.